Hello, this is Tony Hiller from RealClimateScience.com, the climate guy setting the record straight about climate. This video is about the beginnings of the global warming scam. It all started back in the summer of 1988, which was the last really hot summer we've had in the United States. This week in 1988, NASA's James Hansen told Congress that he was 99% certain that the heat was due to a buildup of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Hansen also told Congress in June of 1988 that it was the hottest year ever recorded, even though the year wasn't even half over yet. It was very hot that summer, so it wasn't difficult to get the Des Moines Register to make this their lead story on June 24th, 1988. 88 hottest year ever recorded. Greenhouse effect linked to heat wave. The week that Hansen gave his testimony to Congress, it was very hot in the U.S. Almost the entire country was over 90 degrees, shown by these yellow pins, and the red pins show where it was over 100 degrees. As you can see, it was over 100 degrees near Des Moines and in much of the Midwest, so it wasn't difficult to get the Des Moines Register on board with this idea. Hansen told Congress that he was 99% certain that heat waves would be getting worse in the United States during the 1990s. 3 days before Hansen's testimony was the hottest June 20th on record in the United States. But the heat of June 20th, 1988 was an anomaly, not a trend. In fact, June 20th temperatures have been plummeting in the U.S. over the last century, with the second hottest June 20th being in 1933 and the coldest being in 2003. So Hansen's claim of 99% certainty was just complete garbage. The trend is going in the other direction. Hansen's testimony in Washington, D.C. came during the hottest June on record in that area. And since then, June temperatures have plummeted in the D.C. area. It was really hot on June 23, 1988, the day Hansen gave his testimony to Congress. And not only was it hot outside on June 23, 1988, but Hansen and Senator Tim Wirth of Colorado went into the hearing room the night before and sabotaged the air conditioning. Here's an account which Senator Wirth gave to Frontline years later. Believe it or not, we called the Weather Bureau and found out what historically was the hottest day of the summer. So we scheduled the hearing that day, and bingo, it was the hottest day on record in Washington, or close to it. What we did was went in the room the night before and opened up all the windows so that the air conditioning was not working. So Hansen's giving this testimony. You've got these television cameras back there heating up the room, and the air conditioning in the room didn't appear to work. So it was sort of a perfect collection of events that happened that day with the wonderful Jim Hansen, who was wiping his brow at the witness table and giving this remarkable testimony. It was a very hot summer. They sabotaged the air conditioning. Yellowstone National Park was burning up. It was the perfect scam they were pulling. But Hansen's forecasts quickly started falling apart. A La Nina developed in the Pacific and global temperatures plummeted. James Hansen, director of NASA's Goddard of Space Studies, said a remarkable cooling trend caused by unusual Pacific Ocean currents in the second half of the year forced him to reassess his highly publicized assertion at a Senate hearing this summer that 1988 would be a record setter. There's nothing unusual about La Nina. It's a normal circulation pattern in the Pacific. As is normally the case with James Hansen, he didn't know what he was talking about in June, and he didn't know what he was talking about in December. But by this time, the global warming scam had taken up, and scientists were making ridiculous predictions left and right. Hurricanes 50% stronger. Scientists predict average global temperatures can increase between 4 and 9 degrees in the next 50 years due to the accumulation of CO2. It quickly became obvious that the predictions of increased drought and severe hurricanes were failing. The U.S. has gotten much wetter over time, particularly quite a bit wetter than when Hansen gave his testimony. And major hurricanes have plummeted in the U.S. to a record low. By 1999, it was obvious even to Hansen that his forecasts had failed. This is a paper which Hansen wrote in August of 1999. Empirical evidence does not lend much support to the notion that climate is headed towards more extreme heat and drought. The drought of 1999 covered a smaller area than the 1988 drought, when Hansen gave his testimony, and when the Mississippi almost dried up. In 1988 was a temporary inconvenience as compared with repeated droughts during the 1930s Dust Bowl that caused an exodus from the prairies, as chronicled in Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath. Hansen was upset that the United States had been cooling since the 1930s. This was his graph from 1999. So this was the beginning of the real scam. The data wasn't matching the theory in 1999, so in the year 2000, Hansen simply started changing the data to match the theory. Starting in the year 2000, NASA and NOAA started massively tampering with temperature data, and they turned the measured cooling trend into a warming trend simply by altering the data. This is junk science at its absolute worst. Make no mistake about it, catastrophic global warming is the biggest scam in science history. This is a multi-billion-dollar scam which has been going on for decades. Ending it is going to be a key part of draining the swamp in Washington, D.C. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science for a long time.